I stood beside my sister during her wedding vows, holding her bouquet like the perfect maid of honor. She looked straight at me, smiled at the guests, and said, "And thank God I'm not like my failure sister." People laughed. Even my mom smirked. My chest felt tight, but I didn't interrupt. I waited. When the priest finally asked me to speak, I walked to the microphone, took a steady breath, and handed him an envelope filled with photos and proof that the groom had been cheating for months. The groom's smile dropped. The room went silent. He walked out of the ceremony. My sister collapsed in her wedding dress, screaming my name as if I had ruined her life. But I was done being quiet. I was done being used. My name is Raya Thompson. I am the older sister, the responsible one, the one who worked 2 jobs so my family could stay afloat. When our dad lost his job, I dropped out of college to help. My mom said, "Lindley has real potential. You're stronger. You can handle a setback." So I worked, and she went to school. Month after month, I paid her university fees, her books, her rent, even her groceries. I never put my name on the receipts because I didn't want her to feel embarrassed. I thought helping her was the right thing to do. I thought she would remember who stood beside her. But she never did. Lindley grew into the golden child. She was praised for everything. Every job interview she got, every little achievement. My mom bragged as if Lindley built everything alone. Meanwhile, I became the background character in my own family. When I caught my fiancé cheating on me last year, my mom didn't comfort me. She said, "Stop acting dramatic. Focus on helping your sister. Her future matters." It hurt, but I stayed quiet. I always did. Then Lindley met Caleb. He was charming and handsome, and my mom treated him like he was a gift sent from heaven. She even told relatives, "Raya lost her chance at love, but Lindley won." I felt the sting, but I kept helping. I paid for the wedding dress deposit, the venue deposit, the photographer booking. I told myself I was doing it for family, but every time Lindley talked to me, she acted like she was better than me. She said I had no ambition. She said no man wanted a woman like me. She said I was jealous of her life. Still, I kept giving. I didn't know that the same girl I sacrificed my future for would stand in front of hundreds of people and call me a failure. And I didn't know that her wedding day would become the day I finally took my life back. Subscribe for more powerful stories and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. The tension in my family had been building for years, but the months leading up to my sister's wedding felt like walking into a storm every single day. From the moment the planning started, Lindley acted like she was a celebrity and I was her unpaid assistant. She spoke to me like I didn't have a life of my own, like my only purpose was to make her wedding perfect. During one of our planning meetings, she walked into the room, snapped her fingers, and said, "Raya, these flowers are ugly. They look cheap. What were you thinking?" She didn't even look at the sample arrangement I spent hours putting together after working a double shift. My mom immediately backed her. "Don't make this difficult," she said. "Your sister deserves the best. Stop being sensitive." I swallowed the hurt because I didn't want to ruin anything. I kept telling myself the wedding would bring our family closer. I believed that once the stress was over, Lindley might appreciate what I did. But every week, her attitude got worse. She sent me long text messages demanding money for decorations, dress alterations, and last-minute add-ons. She never said please or thank you. She treated my bank account like it belonged to her. My father noticed the pressure wearing me down, but he stayed quiet. He always avoided conflict. He would pat my shoulder and say, "Your mother and sister are emotional right now. Just get through the wedding." It wasn't comforting, but I understood him. He didn't know how to stand up to them. One night, about a week before the wedding, I walked into my parents' house to drop off some centerpieces. I heard my mother and sister talking in the kitchen. My mother said, "Raya should be grateful she has something useful to offer. She couldn't even keep her own fiancé. At least she can pay for things." My sister laughed and said, "She's jealous of me. I can see it all over her face." It felt like someone punched me in the chest. These were the people I had spent years supporting. I wanted to walk in and confront them, but I walked back out without saying a word. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying not to cry. I kept telling myself that family didn't mean to be cruel. They were stressed. They didn't know how hurtful they sounded. I made excuses for them because that was all I had ever known. Around that same time, signs started appearing that something was wrong between Lindley and Caleb. She called me over one afternoon and said, "Caleb didn't come home until 2 in the morning. He said he fell asleep at the office. Do guys do that?" There was fear in her voice, but she hid it quickly. I recognized the signs right away. My ex-fiancé Zane had used the same excuses. Late nights, unreachable hours, strange behavior. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my gut wouldn't stay quiet. Then a friend of mine who worked security at a downtown hotel sent me a message. She said she saw someone who looked exactly like Caleb walking into the building with a woman who was not Lindley. She even sent me a blurry photo taken from the side. I stared at it for a long time. I kept thinking about how hard I had worked to help Lindley build the future she wanted. I had spent years lifting her up, and now the man she was about to marry was tearing her down, behind her back. I didn't want to tell her without proof. I didn't want to be wrong, so I did what no one had ever done for me. I investigated. I checked public parking records from the hotel. I looked at timestamps. I cross-referenced nights he claimed to be working with social media posts that showed he was somewhere else. The more I found, the more sick I felt. It was clear. Caleb was cheating. Not once, not twice, but several times over months. I finally tried to warn Lindley in a calm and loving way. I sat down with her at her apartment and said, "Lindley, can we talk? I think something might be going on with Caleb." She didn't even let me finish. She pointed her finger at me and exploded. "You're jealous. You are trying to ruin the only good thing I have. You want me to end up miserable like you." Her words hit like a knife. I tried again. "Lindley, I'm not jealous. I just want you to be safe. I know what this looks like. I went through the same thing." She slammed her hand on the counter. "Stop acting like you know everything. Your fiancé left because you were pathetic. Mine won't. Caleb loves me. You're jealous because I'm getting married and you're not." My mother walked into the room just in time to add her own blow. "Raya, stop your drama. Let your sister be happy. You always try to ruin things." In that moment, something inside me shifted. Years of silence, sacrifice, and emotional bruises finally became too heavy. I realized they only loved me when I was useful. They only valued me when I was paying for something. I walked out of their house with a steady heartbeat and a clear mind. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. The night I walked out of my mother's kitchen, everything inside me felt different. For years, I tried to convince myself that my sister didn't mean the cruel things she said, that my mother was stressed, that my family was simply imperfect. But hearing them mock me behind my back shattered something I had been holding together for years. I sat in my car with my hands shaking, feeling a mix of heartbreak and clarity. They didn't respect me. They didn't appreciate anything I had done. They only valued what I provided. For the first time in a long time, I asked myself a hard question. If they didn't value my voice when I warned them, if they didn't care about my feelings, why was I still protecting them? The answer came painfully fast. I was scared to stop. Helping them had become part of my identity. It made me feel needed. But being needed and being loved were not the same. That was the night I decided I would not stay quiet anymore. I opened my laptop and pulled up everything I had saved. The hotel photos, the parking records, the receipts, the timestamps, the social media posts. Every piece of proof that showed Caleb was cheating on my sister while she planned the wedding of her dreams. I arranged everything in order, page by page, so there was no confusion. It wasn't revenge yet. At first, it was simply me preparing to protect her. But then I remembered the way she screamed at me earlier, calling me jealous and pathetic. I remembered my mother saying I always ruined things. I remembered years of giving up my money, my dreams, my time, all to help them. And I realized that if I tried to protect Lindley now, she would never listen. She would twist it. She would blame me. She would paint me as the villain. I printed every proof I collected and placed it neatly into a large white envelope. My hands were steady. My breathing was slow. I felt strangely calm, like my mind had finally stopped fighting itself. I placed the envelope on my dining table and stared at it for several minutes. It felt like a turning point. This was the moment I accepted that my role in this family needed to change. The next day, I called an attorney. His name was Mr. Elliot, a calm, older man with a warm voice. I explained the situation. I told him I had supported my sister through school, paid her bills, covered her life for years. I told him I had proof of every payment, every transfer, every expense. I showed him my bank statements, my digital receipts, and the list of everything I covered. When I finished, he looked at me and said, "You have more than enough evidence to request repayment. These were loans, even if you never said the word loan. People can't use your kindness as an excuse to avoid responsibility." Hearing someone say that hit me hard. I almost cried. For the first time, a stranger recognized what my own family never did. He drafted a formal notice. It was short, direct, and professional. It stated the total amount Lindley owed me. It included dates, descriptions, and the proof attached. At the bottom, it said she had 30 days to respond. I asked him to email it the morning of the wedding. He nodded. When I left his office, I felt lighter. Not happy, not excited, but clear. The fog of guilt that had lived inside me for years was beginning to lift. I wasn't punishing her. I was reclaiming myself. Over the next few days, I stayed quiet and focused. I helped with the wedding as usual. I wanted everyone to think nothing was wrong. My mother barked orders. My sister complained about every little inconvenience. They had no idea the truth was sitting in an envelope tucked inside my purse. The night before the wedding, Lindley sent me a long text message calling me unreliable and reminding me not to embarrass her. I looked at the message, then placed the phone down without replying. I didn't feel hurt. I felt finished. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up before my alarm. I got ready slowly and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection didn't seem weak anymore. My eyes looked steady. My shoulders relaxed. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I placed 2 envelopes into my clutch. The first held the proof of Caleb's cheating. The second held a printed copy of the repayment notice. Driving to the church, I felt a strange mix of sadness and peace. I wasn't excited to hurt anyone, but I wasn't scared of the truth anymore. I had spent so many years drowning myself to keep others comfortable. Now it was time to breathe. As I walked into the bridal suite holding my clutch, Lindley barely glanced at me. She was too busy posing for photos. My mother was fussing over her veil. Neither one noticed the change in my expression, but I knew the wedding would not end the way they expected. I knew the truth was finally going to speak for me. I didn't plan to ruin the wedding. I planned to stop letting them ruin me. The ceremony began with soft music and smiling faces, but all I felt was the steady weight of the 2 envelopes inside my clutch. I stood beside my sister at the altar, holding her bouquet, pretending everything was normal. She looked perfect in her wedding gown. Guests were whispering about how beautiful she looked, admiring every detail. My mother sat in the front row with her chin high, proud and smug, as if this day proved she raised the perfect daughter. I kept my eyes on the floor until the priest invited Lindley to say her vows. She stepped forward, took Caleb's hands, and gave him a dramatic smile. She started strong, talking about love and destiny. But halfway through, she looked directly at me, paused for effect, and said, "And thank God I'm not like my failure sister. She reminds me every day what happens when you let jealousy guide your life." The words hit me like ice water. The guests laughed politely, thinking it was a joke. My mother nodded with a tight grin. She seemed proud of the insult. I could almost hear her silent approval. My father shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. That was the exact moment I knew I wasn't backing down. They had no idea who they were humiliating, no idea what was coming, no idea how calmly I had planned this day. I felt the anger rise for a second, then disappear just as quickly. What replaced it was a deep, quiet strength. When the priest nodded at me to come deliver my maid of honor speech, I walked forward slowly. My heels clicked against the church floor. I could feel every eye on me, waiting for some sweet, emotional message about my sister. I took the microphone, but instead of opening the speech I had written, I opened my clutch. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was steady. Everything inside me felt clear. "Before I speak," I said, "I want to share something important, something honest." Lindley's smile disappeared. she whispered through clenched teeth. Don't ruin my moment. I ignored her. I pulled out the first envelope and handed it to the priest. He opened it, expecting maybe a poem or a sentimental letter, but his expression changed the moment he looked inside. His eyebrows lifted, his mouth tightened. He hesitated, then showed the top photo to Caleb. Caleb reached out and took the envelope. He slowly pulled out the first picture. It showed him outside a hotel, kissing the woman he'd been seeing behind my sister's back. You could feel the shock move through the room like a wave. Guests gasped. A few people covered their mouths. Caleb flipped through each photo, each timestamp, each piece of proof. His face lost all color. He closed the envelope as if it suddenly burned his hands. Lindley looked confused for a second, then panicked. She grabbed the envelope from him, pulled out the photos, and her entire body froze when she saw what was on them. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "This is fake. You edited these." I spoke calmly. "Nothing is fake. Everything is time-stamped. Everything is verified. You told me I was jealous when I tried to warn you. You told me I wanted to ruin your relationship, but Caleb ruined it himself." The guests stared at her, not me. Her perfect image was slipping right through her fingers. Caleb finally found his voice. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but I can't pretend anymore. I didn't think anyone would find out. I was wrong." Lindley screamed at him, "You liar. You promised me." She threw the envelope at his chest and turned to me like I caused all of it. "You did this. You hate me so much you'd destroy my wedding." I pulled out the second envelope and held it up. "This isn't about hate. This is about truth." She laughed shakily. "What truth now? What else could you possibly have?" "This," I said, "is the notice from my attorney." Silence dropped over the room. My mother sat up straighter. Her face turned cold. I continued. "This is a formal request for you to repay the money I loaned you for 7 years. Your degree, your rent, your bills, your courses, your medications, your bridal deposits, and everything you claimed you earned on your own. I paid it. I have proof of every dollar." The room exploded in murmurs. My mother stood suddenly and yelled, "Raya, you are humiliating this family." I turned to her. "No, I am telling the truth, something I should have done years ago." Lindley stumbled backward, shaking. "You can't do this. You can't make me pay. You're my sister." "I was your sister," I said, "when you needed money, not when you wanted to treat me like dirt." Caleb placed the ring box on the table beside the priest. "This wedding is not happening." He walked out of the church without looking back. My sister fell to her knees in her wedding dress, crying and screaming as the guests stared in shock. But I felt calm. I felt free. I felt like someone who finally stopped living under other people's shadows. The truth had spoken louder than any speech I could have ever written. The moment I stepped out of the church, the air felt cold and sharp against my skin, but it also felt clean. I stood on the stone steps, breathing in deep as if I had been underwater for years, and finally broke the surface. Behind me, the voices inside the church blended into a strange mix of crying, yelling, and shocked whispers. But it all felt far away. I was no longer part of the chaos. I was finally outside of it. My father came out a few minutes later. He didn't rush or look frantic. He walked toward me slowly, like someone who had been carrying something heavy on his back for too long. When he reached me, he stopped and looked into my eyes with a sadness that made my heart ache. "Raya," he said quietly, "I am sorry. I should have seen it. I should have stood up for you. I should have protected you." Hearing that from him almost broke me more than anything else. My father had always been gentle but silent, trapped between a domineering wife and a demanding daughter. He had never been the type to confront anyone. He carried guilt quietly, like a man walking with stones in his pockets. "It's not your fault," I said, but he shook his head. "I let your mother decide everything. I let her treat you unfairly. I let Lindley walk all over you. I watched you pay for everything, give up everything, and I said nothing because I didn't want to start a fight." He covered his face with his hands and whispered, "I failed you." For the first time, I stepped forward and hugged him. He was stiff at first, then held me like he hadn't hugged me in years. Maybe he hadn't. We stood there until the church doors opened again. My mother walked out next. Her face was red with anger, Her makeup streaked from crying or yelling. I couldn't tell which. She looked at me like I had committed a crime. "You destroyed your sister's future," she snapped. "You embarrassed this family in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I met her eyes calmly. "I told the truth," she scoffed. "Truth. You only care about making yourself look good. You always wanted what she had." That made me laugh, not out of humor but disbelief. What she had was built on my money, my time, my sacrifices. "You were supposed to help your sister," she said sharply. "That is your job as the older one. You should have stayed in your place." The old version of me would have cried, apologized, or tried to explain, but something had changed. My voice stayed steady. "I don't have a place in a family that only loves me when they need something." She tried to speak again, but stopped when my father stepped between us for the first time in his life. His voice was firm, stronger than I had ever heard it. "Darla, stop. She's right. We treated her like she didn't matter. We treated her like a wallet. I'm not letting you talk to her like that anymore." My mother stared at him as if he had betrayed her. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, as if she suddenly realized she no longer had control. She turned away and stormed inside. When she was gone, my father sighed and sat down on the steps. "I don't know what will happen now," he said, "but I want to fix things. With you, if you'll let me." I sat down next to him. "One day at a time," I said. Soon, guests began leaving the church, whispering as they walked past us. Some looked curious, some looked sympathetic. A few nodded at me, as if they understood why I did what I did. None of them judged me the way my mother had feared. The truth didn't need to be defended. It was standing right there in the open. Later that evening, I received an email from my attorney. He confirmed that the repayment notice had been delivered to Linley's inbox right before the ceremony, exactly as planned. She had ignored it then, but she wouldn't be able to ignore it now that everyone knew the truth. Over the next few days, the fallout spread quickly. Caleb officially ended the relationship and returned the engagement ring. His family blamed Linley and thanked me for exposing the truth before he made a bigger mistake. My mother tried to twist the story to relatives, saying I acted out of jealousy, but the documents I shared privately with a few close relatives made her lies fall apart. Linley called me once, screaming and sobbing, blaming me for everything. I didn't answer. I blocked her. I needed space from the girl who had taken so much from me without a second thought. For the first time, I finally set boundaries. I used to think cutting someone off was cruel, but I learned that cutting off abuse is self-respect. I used to think family always stayed together, no matter what, but I learned that family can also hurt you worse than anyone else. I moved into a new apartment a month later, a small place with soft lighting, warm colors, and quiet mornings. I decorated it the way I wanted. I saved money instead of giving it away. I slept peacefully without wondering who needed something from me. For the first time in my life, I chose myself, and that choice changed everything. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and comment below where you are watching from.